Okay, before I get going, I feel like I must warn you that I'm going to be using some words that might make you feel uncomfortable. And I'm letting you know, though, now that I'm here with you, and I love you, and we can talk more if you like. Okay? Right. I'm going to give you a list of words, and I want you to just let your mind consider any associations that might arise. Plump, chubby, well-fed, Rubenesque, stout, stocky, husky, full-figured, big and tall, heavy-set, overweight, fat, obese. Okay, here's another list. Slender, svelte, waif-like, slight, skinny, thin, beanpole, underweight, bony, scrawny, emaciated. You got some images yet? Last list. Curious, attentive, active, engaged, creative, thoughtful, aware. All right, that last list is harder to come up with concrete images, but I think they describe some of the best qualities in a person. What about those other lists? Did any of those words kind of buzz or burn in your brain or heart? Has anyone ever used one of those words to describe you? Have you described yourself with one of those words? Have you described another person with some of those words? According to body mass index tables, some days I'm obese, other days I'm simply overweight. At times I weigh more, at times I weigh less, but this is what I weigh right now. What the tables don't really include is my activity level, which is moderate. They also don't factor in how happy I am. The tables don't notice if I have friends or if my friends think that I'm a good friend. I guess that's harder to measure. But those things, those details would tell you more about how I'm living my life than anything this table or my bathroom scales will report. Perhaps you are also more complex than some numbers on a table. There's more to you than what's on a scale. And perhaps there's some part of you that is still stinging from some of the words back on those lists. Because few of us, I don't think any of us has ever really escaped any of those words. Even the nicer ones can still feel bad if it's a label that others place upon you or labels that you feel trapped in. Now, one of the upsides to our current political crises is that we are momentarily being distracted from some other issues that just even a couple of years ago were like front and center, hot. They seemed really crucial. And I want to say that it doesn't mean that those matters are gone. It's just that our attention is elsewhere. I was talking with my father yesterday, and I think the words dumpster fire came out. but I'm pointing this out because lurking just below the headlines, just past our immediate attention, there are some painful matters that are going to return at the first opportunity. And one of those things that's going to return is our collective preoccupation with the weight of other people in our country. So this is why we've been told that we have an obesity epidemic. And, doing the research for this sermon, you'll find that researchers and physicians and anxious parents have a lot to say about this situation. And there's really no end of potential culprits. My personal favorite is high fructose corn syrup, but that's just me. There are other culprits that are frequently invoked. It's video games and processed foods, air conditioning. When these things are brought forward, they're demonized. They are made into something that is inherently dangerous, awful, sinful, stripped of any kind of neutral or redeeming qualities. And that's what it means to demonize something or someone. So with my anthropologist's ear, I listen to the rhetoric. Well, if only people would eat sensibly. People who eat fast food are just lazy. Parents that feed their kids junk food should be arrested. Well, losing weight is just a matter of self-discipline. I listen to these statements and then I lean back and I consider. I consider with the anthropologist's ear, and this is why I consider how everything is culturally mediated. Everything, including attitudes towards body size. It's mediated by the culture around us. So regardless of what any scientific research actually reveals, we're going to look at body sizes through the lens of our American culture. And ours is a culture that is saturated with messages that tie food and morality so tightly together that we really have trouble separating the two. So this is why people with larger bodies are often portrayed as greedy, lazy, selfish, or just short-sighted. And people with thin bodies are depicted as being stingy or vain, ungenerous, critical, unhappy. These stereotypes, these messages are very deeply ingrained into our cultures and our minds however, in cultures that regularly experience food insecurity, plumpness is a sign of health and survival. In some cultures, people are considered much more respectable when they carry around some extra calories because it's an indicator that they have been successful. Plenty of cultures consider it very auspicious for their leaders to be larger because it shows that they have more than enough in their village. In these places, size is a display of wealth, stability, success. If you go to the National Portrait Gallery in Washington and you take a long look at all the portraits of our presidents from 100 years ago, these were men at the top of their game. And many of them were over 250 pounds. And my favorite is William Howard Taft. It's a gorgeous portrait. If you ever get a chance to see it in person, it glows. It glows. And the portrait reveals a man who is comfortable and confident and deeply satisfied with his accomplishments. We're happier when we see a chubby baby. That's my son holding his cousin. And he's terrified because he's never held a baby before. And if you see, the baby is kind of hanging onto him like a koala because she realizes she's in inexpert hands. And yeah, grandma is right there ready to. Yeah. But oh, she's just little cheeks. You get happier when you see the plump baby, because babies who are thin, we know they're in danger. We know that deep down, some extra calories can mean survival through tough times. So how did we get from this ancient wisdom that carrying some extra calories is a good plan to a place where if I weigh anything over 135 pounds, I become a problem, a medical problem, a societal problem. I become a problem person. Right now in our country, we know better than to make judgmental statements about a person based on the color of their skin. We've learned. We do better. We are better. And we've even made laws to limit that behavior. And yet, still in our country, people whose body mass index places them on one of those actuarial charts will still face discrimination in hiring, in promotions, and the microaggressions against people who are on the extremes, those unconscious expressions of judgment that hurts. What just happened? Why do I feel bad? Those disapproving scowls, the avoidance, the nervous laughter, the tut-tut, it indicates that one person is uncomfortable with another person's presence. I think of a friend who has a larger body than mine. She just no longer even eats out at restaurants anymore because she's just so tired of people staring, and then the tisk-tisk when she orders anything more than a glass of water and a piece of dry lettuce. She just doesn't need that. I'm just telling you what you already know, that we consciously and unconsciously hold prejudices against other people, and we act on these prejudices consciously and unconsciously. This is part of our xenophobic response. It seems to be hardwired into our brains, but we have bigger brains now. We have brains that are malleable. They're so malleable that we actually can and do change. We change our cultures based upon our experiences and reason. So when we set out to change something, if we want to create a new, more inclusive set of values and practices, the way you make some change is you first name, you critically reflect, and then you act upon what you encounter. So name, reflect, act. How do we start? What needs to be named? What needs to be reflected upon? How are we going to act if we're going to make any kind of change? So let's start by naming the problems. We judge others' bodies in comparison to our own bodies. When I was in Korea, I was looking at these incredibly thin young women. That's just the way they are built. And I said, I know I have trouble when I look at them because they're so thin. I wonder, where do they keep their internal organs? It's because I'm thinking of my body. And we make moral assessments of a person's character based upon their body size. We just do this. And in this judging, there comes discrimination and shame and brokenness. So that's part of the naming. There's another part of the naming and the work of reflection. Let's go ahead and just unpack the rhetoric that has built up around body size. For example, there's the argument that there's an epidemic that is expensive to our society. So in my research, I found that actually it's kind of plateaued. which would say we've kind of hit a stasis point based on some environmental factors. But the arguments, the rhetoric reveals that, and when you start trying to look at things, you can see maybe there's links to agricultural subsidies. Maybe it's all processed foods. Maybe it's in poverty and insecurity of food. It's very complicated. So you have to be careful. When you start pulling on these strings, the knot does not come untied. The knot actually tightens up in places. So this is more complicated than any facile answer. So we really don't know why some bodies store calories so much more effectively than others. The microbiome of the gut seems to be a part of it. But we really don't know why so many species, it's not just humans, other species are also getting heavier. And let me just put it out. Anybody who tells you that it's a simple calculation of calories in and energy out, they're using rhetoric to avoid the complexity of the matter. I can't propose anything simple to address it. In fact, I'm going to propose something even harder in a minute. I will counter to these arguments that when we reflect on the aspect of the issues, we're going to see that, yes, the medical costs are high when a person's weight is on an extreme end, but the cost to the person of intolerance is much, much higher. Here's something to consider from the world of research. One study went and examined the longevity of 3 groups of people, how long they lived. One group were active and very lean. One people tended to diet frequently for weight loss. And one group of people really did nothing in particular except just go about their lives. 3 groups. An analysis of the data revealed that the active, lean folks did have longer lives than the folks who did whose weight yo-yoed with dieting. But the third group, the folks who simply didn't do anything in particular, they had reasonably long lives. Then additional analysis of existing data shows that people who are somewhat overweight have longer lives than people who are very lean or very obese. So it would appear that having a few extra calories tucked away can come in handy during times of illness or injury. Now, go ahead, let's back to the work of naming, reflecting, acting. Here's one way we might act ourselves into new ways of being together, how we might start changing our responses towards people who have a different body size, larger or smaller, than our own bodies. First, look at your own body and see if you can come to a place of love and acceptance of your own body. Your own body, as it is right now. Not if you gain or lose, or even stand up straight or take your vitamins daily. Right now, as your body is. Can you love your body right now with all of its attendant aches and silly little spots and the scars that tell the stories of how you survived? Can you start by delighting in your own skin and your nose and the places that have healed funny? And then can you begin to delight in another person's body? It helps. It's easier if you start with someone you love. Can you see them as they were when they were a baby with the softest skin? Now can you love them with their scattering of funny moles and freckles and wide places and the scars that tell part of the story of how they survived? You start with the people you are close to, and then you work your way outwards. to the people you might even meet for the very first time. Look at their eyes. Look at the movement of their hands. Find what is lovely about that body. That's what I do as an individual, but what do we do as a congregation? How might we as a congregation name, reflect, act? What can a spiritual community offer? Might I suggest that we offer what spiritual communities offer best? Sanctuary. Sanctuary from judgmental gazes. Sanctuary from oversimplified arguments. Sanctuary for ourselves and others who need it. Let us consider how we as a spiritual community welcome all as we are. And our work is to find that spark of the divine in each person as it animates and delights each body. That spark of the divine that connects us is all part of what makes each precious and astonishing. And when we come together, when we do this work together, part of our work as a spiritual community, we are charged with the work of witnessing the beauty and power of that spark. Let this be a place where we are welcomed as babies, celebrated as dancing acts of love, and mourned when we leave this place. Let this be a place where we do not judge the size of the body, but recognize the size of the spirit that moves it. Let this be a place where we treat our bodies with the deep respect and care that we offer to that which is holy, because our bodies are part of the all that is, and by that truth, they are holy. This is the work we do here. And when we have learned how to do this work well here with the bodies assembled in this place of sanctuary, may we take this out into the larger world where so many are feeling hurt and unsafe and ashamed of their simply being. That is a condition that we as a society, as a people, we cannot afford. Let us look at each person not as a stereotype, as a label, but as the complex, amazing being that they truly are. Let's get serious about loving the wholeness that is our birthright. May it be so. Blessed be.